Hey, this is Scott, and today I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of the Smallrig VCT shoulder plate compared to the Canon C200 baseplate and shoulder rig setup that I had talked about before. So like I said, I have reviewed the C200 baseplate in a shoulder rig before, and I did really like it, but of course there were some cons as well, so I wanted to compare it to the more commonly used VCT style shoulder pad that Smallrig makes, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm recording on the C200 at the moment, so I don't have it here, but I will put some pictures and b-roll over this to show you kind of how these two look and work all set up with the camera on there as well. So the biggest thing that stands out to me is that the VCT shoulder pad feels just like a much more proper solution, whereas my rig with the C200 baseplate is a bit more Frankenstein together. Obviously, a huge part of that is the ability to use a VCT-14 plate on your tripod and put the entire rig on there, whereas with the previous setup I had an RE dovetail on my tripod to put the camera and the base plate on, leaving the shoulder pad and the arms separate. A big drawback of this was that when I'm using the C200 grip on the shoulder rig, that means I need to remove it and reattach it to the camera when going back and forth between the tripod shoulder rig. The actual base plate part of the whole setup for the C200 itself is nice and thin, not really raising the center of balance for your counterbalance on the tripod, but it has an Arca Swiss style plate, and I don't personally know of any video ahead with an Arca Swiss style quick release, so it didn't really help. The benefit of this previous setup though was that you had a lot of flexibility in where the camera itself sat on the rig, as well as where the shoulder pad was aligned on the RE dovetail piece. The RE plate also came out further in front than the VCT pad does, meaning that the rosettes and the Smallrig arms were further forward, so I only needed the shortest arms to hold it comfortably. With the VCT pad, it sits back a bit further on your shoulder because it's all built around where that pad sits on your shoulder, and I find myself needing slightly longer Smallrig arms. It's obviously not a huge deal, but just be aware of that difference if you're choosing which to use and how to build a rig for yourself. Another nice thing about the C200 baseplate is that it can screw into the bottom of the C200 using all 4 screws, giving a really solid connection. Lots of people have complained that some other plates tend to sit weirdly on the bottom of the C200, and that is true at least for me with the Manfrotto style plate in the VCT part. Again, it's not a huge deal, but I did like the base plate itself on the C200 kit, aside from that Arca Swiss style plate. The VCT plate has 15mm rod clamps in both the front and the back, which means that you only need short rods instead of the very long ones you need with the C200 kit when you want accessories both in the front and in the back. The rods in the front can also be adjusted vertically to compensate for any misalignment with things like mat boxes. Overall, because of the all-in-one package, it sits a bit lower and generally looks a little bit more streamlined than the C200 kit. As I mentioned before, there is a Manfrotto style plate in this VCT rig, which will be compatible with a lot more tripods and other accessories than the Arca Swiss style plate on the C200 baseplate. Its length still gives you plenty of adjustment for finding the center of balance of your camera when placing it onto the shoulder pad, and it locks in place as do pretty much all sliding plates. What's also nice is that you get 2 built-in rosettes on the front to attach arms or whatever you may want, and they're also removable if you feel like one or both of them get in the way for you. I like that there are 2 here, whereas the Zacuto VCT pad has only 1, forcing you to use an extra part to get a rosette on the left side. The pad itself is exactly the same in the VCT part as the one that I used under the dovetail on my other setup, and it's fairly comfortable. The overall build quality is up to typical Smallrig standards, but there are a few issues that I know a lot of other people have run into as well. First of all, make sure that you're using an original VCT-14 plate, not the U14 style, because that can cause issues. Even still, the catch at the rear of the VCT shoulder pad was too high to clip onto the VCT plate originally because of the thickness of the washers under that part. I just unscrewed it, put the washers on the underside of this part, and then screwed it back in, letting it sit a little bit lower, and it worked perfectly. The bigger problem is that I originally had a lot of play in the V-lock clip area, and the whole rig could tilt from side to side more than it should, which is to say, not at all. Apparently, Smallrig is aware of this issue and should be working to fix it as far as I know, so if you're watching this at some time in the future, it could already be resolved. At the moment though, there is a DIY fix that I found thanks to another user in the Smallrig Facebook group, but it does take a little bit of effort. I removed the actual V-lock part from the rig and sanded it down to get a tighter fit. In my case, there were originally some little tabs sticking out to match up to the holes in the rig, but I sanded those right off too. There are 3 screws that hold it on tight, so I don't think that they're really necessary anyway. Keep in mind that you don't want to do like I accidentally did and sand the bottom side. It makes no difference. You'll want to sand the top side, the side that touches the actual VCT shoulder pad part, so that way you're effectively raising up the V-lock piece towards the rig when it's screwed on, giving you a tighter fit into that VCT-14 plate. It took a little effort and it took a little time, but the problem is solved. So other than those two little problems, there's really not a lot to complain about with the VCT shoulder rig from Smallrig. It really is a great solution and I would highly recommend it. Of course, if you do still want the C200 baseplate specifically for whatever reason, I still really do like that, and that setup also worked very well for me. But if you don't really need that for any particular reason, the VCT shoulder pad really adds a lot of versatility and usability to that because you can just pop it right on a tripod like that. You do need that VCT plate as well, which is obviously sold separately and not by Smallrig, but it is a really good solution. Just be prepared for a little bit of kind of DIY surgery if you are going to go with that route. If you have any questions or comments about either part or either setup, just let me know down below and I will definitely get back to you. If you like this video or found it helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, and as always, thank you for watching.